I am delighted to bring back Stefan Swanepoel, and the topic at this point is I don't know if many of you have had the opportunity to read the MLS 2020 agenda. If you have not, it's great reading. I would suggest you take it on the plane or download it and take a look at it. But when the MLS Roundtable, a thought leadership group dedicated to advancing the broker's business, collectively made a decision of what must occur over the next 36 months to ensure broker and agent are at the center of the conversation with consumers. The name that immediately came to mind was not Greg Robertson. It was commissioned by Stefan and the T3 group, and he reached out to create a national conversation, which includes many CMLS members, and published a brand new report called the MLS 2020 Agenda. It is my pleasure to welcome back the esteemed Stefan Swanepoel to talk about the report and share part of that national conversation with us today. Thank you, Stefan.
Very, very much. Thank you, Beth. Good morning, everyone. In front of you should be a copy of this report. It was published last week. You are the first that receive a hard copy, and then there are another few thousand copies which will be mailed to the rest of the industry during the course of next week. There are a lot of wisdom in this group. There's a lot of wisdom that has been shared by these people. I'm sure that all of you could have participated and contributed equally as much. So this is not meant to be an exclusive or a unique special group of people, but we wanted to try and get a sampling of the group of people that we felt would carry a large voice and give us an indication of what we think the industry wants, needs. And again, if you read the report, I don't think it's eye-opening. I think it's just maybe like the Danger Report. It's trying to capture the mood of the industry. This started by a group of people in this audience, a group of MLS executives that, just like you, are concerned about the future, would like to do something about the future, would like to try and address the future, and they got together just to be in an informal group to just have some discussion. So this started as a strategic think tank forum. The intention is not to try and create a new group or new cadre or new association or a new pressure group or a new direction. This is just an effort by some concerned people in this room saying, let's take everybody's thoughts. Let's take what you have and let's put it on a piece of paper, and let's create maybe the beginning of a discussion. So that's all this is. It is probably very similar to what you already think or know. You'll see that the intention was to try and get a cross-section. There are some MLS executives that participated in this discussion. There are some vendors. There are some association people. Most importantly, there are our members. There are some franchises. There are some other groups that have participated. So it was to try and get an entire industry spectrum. This morning, we're going to invite 4 more people to join us on stage just to follow up on this discussion and see where the discussion can go. So in no particular order, they can join us. I think we have Jeff up here. Jeff, good morning. How are you? A broker of fame. Thank you to join us. Michael. Oh, Anna-Marie. Anna-Marie, please come up. Anna-Marie DeCassi, thank you very much for joining us. Tom Hurlbrink. Saw you on stage yesterday. Thank you very much. Michael Schlatt, welcome to join us. Thank you. So these were just, have a seat, please. This is not a canned or a prepared discussion. We wanted, the discussion which we had here had only really one question, and that is, what do you think are the issues that the MLS industry should be addressing in the next? And again, the date is simply just because it's a catchy date. There's no motive or no hidden date behind 2020. We could have had 2021, 22, 23. It's just a round date, which is roughly 2 years, 3 years into the future. So I did not interview or did not have the privilege of interview. Tell us, give us your thoughts. If I just start here, we'll just go down the lane. What are your thoughts? What are the big issues for you, for the MLS industry in the next 24, 36 months?
Well, I mean, obviously consolidation, without spending tons of time on that, because I think we already have for the last 15 years. I think efficiencies, organizations like the MLS Grid, trying to help MLSs become more efficient, more cost effective, trying to save money. The more money we have, we can serve our members better. So I guess what confuses me a little bit in looking not only at this study, but coming to events like this and listening and talking to you is that when there is an effort in the industry to have this type of savings, the fact that there's only 8 MLSs so far participating, Anne Marie's one in the MLS grid, so in my mind, we need to continue to work together to make sure efficiencies, efforts of consolidation can just continue to be discussed so we don't look like the skeletons at the table as we saw in the presentation yesterday. Although I could lose about 80 pounds and still not be a skeleton, so I'm okay with that.
Anne-Marie, you mentioned you're part of the grid. You're also part of the MLS Roundtable that helps just start the discussion. So you've been involved in some of the discussion. You're a very progressive MLS leader. What are your thoughts?
Well, I actually think that the title was by design. I think we said we don't have 10 years to look out and predict what the future is. We need immediate answers and actions and a plan. So we said 3 years out. You know, we got to get this done. So I do think that that was very intentional.
Something manageable, something within our grasp.
Yeah, because it's going to happen, and we need to be there leading that. So
what do you think what could we tackle in the next 3 years? What would be the thing you would like to tackle in 3 years?
Well, a couple of things. I do think everybody's talking, the buzzword this year is consolidation. I do think it is happening. I think that there are a lot of small to mid-sized MLSs who are seeing the future and realize they need to do something now, and they don't want to be the skeletons at the table either. So they are collaborating with large regional MLSs, which is good, but we still have some holdouts who have their head in the sand, and now's the time to wake up and say, okay, if we're a realtor-owned MLS, association-owned MLS, we need to figure out what our future is. And in a sense, divorce ourselves from that MLS and at a minimum become financially independent of that MLS. And that's something associations need to be doing now as they're doing strategic plans for the next couple years. That would be an immediate thing.
Yep, that would be an immediate thing. Tom, you're also part of the MLS Roundtable. You're part of the discussion, and you're in the Northwest. You have a very unique circumstance and a very unique MLS. Are your views, your needs, your desires any different, or are they pretty much the same?
We have similar interests and goals. Consolidation obviously would be something that could benefit our largest brokers and franchises who span, 3, 15. One of our largest broker members is in over 70 MLSs.
70 MLSs.
70 MLSs.
Holy smokes.
But we recognize Northwest MLS is different. We are broker owned, so we have 2,000 firms that are all participant owners in Northwest MLS, not a realtor association. We also recognize franchises as members, the franchisor. So we've never done anything to necessarily inhibit their ability to aggregate and consolidate all their data on their website. That's a little bit different. And then, of course, our challenge, if we want to continue to grow and or consolidate, and we're 2,000 firms, 28,000 practicing agents or brokers, they're called brokers in Washington. About 85% of all the transactions in Washington State go through our MLS, but there are almost a dozen other MLSs in the state. 300 members, 70 members, 35 members, another 400 members, and they're realtor association owned. So one of the biggest challenges for us is they don't want to lose their identity, their sense of control, maybe the money that's generated from their MLS to keep the realtor association alive. We do help by augmenting with government affairs support for 15 of the associations that have been sort of assimilated into Northwest MLS in the last 25 years, but there's more we could do. I think there is a conversation we need to have, and it needs to be broker to broker more so than Tom Hurtlebrink and MLS staff riding over the mountains and scaring everybody. So, so there is a sense that those things are important to us, and yet we're very conservative, we're very focused. Our board and our leadership has always said, it's okay to take our time and make a really solid decision when we make a decision instead of go after every shiny penny. So we're very interested in the grid. The brokers are slowly learning about that. Same with Broker Portal, we've been slow. Upstream, it's been slow for us. So these conferences are opportunities for us to learn more. The 2020 thing, is helpful, because I think anytime you create a goal or an objective with a timeline, you may not hit it, but at least you're moving in the right direction.
Pressure to move forward. Michael, you're one of our two brokers on stage here today, and I know your company's been growing very well recently, and you have multiple companies. I'm assuming you're in multiple markets as well?
We are. We're in 3 states, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut.
How many MLSs do you have to belong to, or do you belong to?
Well, we're fortunate. What was that number, 70 MLSs? No, we're in 4, and 2 in Massachusetts, 1 in Connecticut, and 1 in Rhode Island. And we're fortunate that all 4 are quality MLSs, all 4 associations are quality associations. But it presents challenges every day. In fact, the 3 of the 4 that we're members of changed operating systems in the last 18 months.
That was fun, right?
Yeah, it was. It's it was like listening to the guy with the kilt when we were talking to our agents. They they were frustrated, and the challenge for us was we were trying to move our company forward and initiate new technologies, and we couldn't get the agents' attention, and we still can't get the agents' attention in certain marketplaces because they're consumed by the change and just the day-to-day operating of navigating the MLS system.
You're our customer, right? The brokers. What would you like the MLS to do better for you? How can this group of people, how can this fraternity, whether it's 70 or 4 or whichever number it is, how can we better serve you?
You know, I've thought a lot about that question, Stefan, obviously, in coming to sit here on this panel. You know, I think the MLS has to speak for the entire industry. I think it's a leveling of the playing field. I don't believe that we should be weeding out brokerages. I think that the small brokerage, I'd like to consider ours somewhat larger brokerage. I think the small brokerages in our marketplace are just as important as we are, and that open competition is what makes our industry special. So what I think we can do, obviously, and we've all talked about it, consolidation, make it more consistent across the board in each marketplace. I believe in regional MLSs. I think that the consistency of data is obviously a huge issue. The consumer's already spoken. The consumer, what they want is already there on Zillow. That's the information that they're looking for, right? So why aren't we finding ways to give them the same information, yet making sure that it's more accurate and more consistent across all marketplaces?
Consistency. And Jeff, in your neck of the woods, is it the same issue, consistency?
I would say so. You know, we're pretty proud our MLS listens to the brokers, and I think it's important. Rebecca last night was asking, you know, what is it that brokerages need in terms of technology? And as a broker owner, I can legitimately say I have no clue what I need in terms of technology. I sell houses and recruit salespeople. So from a technology standpoint, I rely on the experts to say, hey, maybe this can help you run your business more effectively. But when you're looking again toward the industry and the initiative like BPP, I think we're at 40% involvement in our organization, and being able to see the brokers start to connect and get it, saying, oh wow, maybe I can get leads on my listings and not have to pay $1,500 a day to get the leads back. And I think as they slowly start to understand that, when people say we're a little slow to get involved, it gets a little bit easier when the brokerages in the marketplace start seeing those kind of results. So again, I guess anticipating our needs and, you know, listening to what our problem points are.
So to any one of you that would like to kick off the question, some of the things we talk about, consistency, consolidation, it's been around a while. It's not quite new. We've spoken about it. Some of us remember even 2 decades that we spent. What's different now? What can we do now to really bring the consistency to bear or increase the consolidation? What do we do now between now and 2020 to actually make something happen that it's going to be different?
I'm going to put a shameless plug in for the MLS grid because it's an example where we're actually creating a solution. And you know, there's a lot of efforts going on right now with good intentions, whether it's the broker public portal or upstream. But the grid is actually happening, and we are going to be going live, and we will be looking for more MLSs to join us. And your situation is a perfect example that if all 4 of the MLSs that you belong to the grid, your benefit would be a single data feed, a single license, a single set of rules, which would be a huge cost saving for a broker in 4 markets like that. So that's a sort of immediate solution that is happening. It's not the end all and the be
Could
all.
I pause you for a second and say, let's assume that there's some people that might not know exactly what the grid is. Could you give us a 30-second, what is the grid?
So the grid right now is a LLC that was formed by a group of 7 MLSs. It will be owned and operated by this LLC, owned and operated by MLSs. But our intention is really to benefit and help the brokers save costs. I mean, that's what's driving us. So ultimately, if you belong to the grid, you will send your data to the grid. It will be accessible to any broker who subscribes to your MLS, and they will be able to get a single feed, but it's, in a sense, aggregated with all the other MLSs who participate so that we are all RISO compliant, the data is standardized, the feed will be standardized, we have one listing or licensing agreement. The only thing that will be different is the pricing, and we can't price fix. So as long as you belong to an MLS and you want the IDX feed for them, you will pay the price of that MLS, but you will get the IDX feed for each MLS that you belong to will be consistent, and you don't have to spend time and money aggregating all those databases.
All right, so that addresses one of the 3 items at the back, right, where we have the takeaway, where we actually had your takeaway. We said one of the items was consistency. You also mentioned it. Right, next item. Tom, what do you think? What else could we focus on? Give me another suggestion.
Well, I think one of the struggles that I feel and see is that we talk about these concepts, and then people go to work on these concepts, the grid, maybe even broker portal, which now the broker public portal is a little bit more visible. Upstream is still not really visible. So we're all so busy that if you can't see what this solution really is and how it might apply, it's hard to make a decision to go forward. So the internet was created in 1990, World Wide Web, 1993. So we're almost 25 years down the road, and I think what's happening is the manifestation of the reality of the power that the internet created. So it wasn't until people really saw that Zillow had basically the national or almost a global footprint of all the listings all the time from everybody. And that's when the industry kind of said, oh, geez, yeah, we have Realtor.com. What happened to that? Well, we didn't really support that maybe as much as we could have. So I think what we're seeing is the brokers got frustrated, moved towards upstream. And there was an initiative for broker public portal. But those have not gone as smooth or quickly as we would hope. I think the MLSs are feeling, and this is my case as well, what can we do to help? So Northwest MLS is, we're out there in terms of geography. So the grid didn't mean anything even to us 6 months or a year ago. But I know at your conference, the T3 Summit, one of my largest brokers, Lennox Scott, saw a presentation about the grid and felt very positive and excited that, oh, this is really something that could work. And he is in 15 to 18 MLSs. So there's really some things happening. I think it's just getting the message out.
Yeah. It doesn't underscore what we said yesterday, that you said that the internet's maybe almost 25 years old. It takes a long time for things to go mainstream, right? I mean, the grid is only a few years, upstream is only a few years, and it actually takes more than a few years to be able to power through the entire industry. Mm-hmm. Michael, what as a broker, what frustrates you about the MLS? What would you like to change if you had the power? You were able to be, I don't know, CMLS and NAR and upstream and RPR all in one, and you were the king tomorrow. What should we do different?
I don't think complacency is the word, because I don't think there is any complacency in this room. I don't think there's any complacency within the MLSs. But territorialism certainly is really at the top of that list. And I think that NAR is the one entity that's really positioned to break through that and to not force, because I don't think we should be forcing anything, but to navigate the minefield that is consolidation. And if NAR puts its energy behind it, and we all keep in mind that it has to be win-win for all of our MLSs, for all of our associations, I think that we can get there a whole heck of a lot quicker.
So I like that. I hear a suggestion that we have the National Association of Realtors step up more to the plate and
Absolutely.
help facilitate more and drive more, but not dictate, but drive and be a catalyst. How do you feel? What frustrates you?
Well, you know, David Sharon said, don't hold back when I come out here. So I guess my struggle with the sentence that I just heard is that we used NAR and quicker in the same sentence. And I struggle. This is where Rebecca starts pulling me off stage. I guess I would actually disagree with that. I think we need to, as MLSs, look together. Again, not every MLS is as involved or connected with NAR. Ours certainly is not. But I've been doing this for just a little over 10 years, and what amazes me is that if you miss a meeting and you go to the next one, it's 6 months later, it's like watching the soap opera back in the 70s when they give you all of what happened yesterday. It's like, God, I was there and I missed it. I don't understand how this works. So I disagree. I think the people in this room can be much more nimble, can make decisions much more quickly, and I think that's what's going to take. What was it yesterday they said that the whole situation with Zillow and Trulia happened in 6 weeks, and we're talking about trying to do something by 2020, and everybody's like, wow, that's so fast. That's 3 years. I mean, I'm amazed at what we settle for, right? When we talk about technology, the fact that we're trying to get from point A to point B in 3 years, I think is a little bit of a joke, right? I think we need to be quicker than that. I think every decision maker is in the room for most MLSs. The CEO is here. The president of the board is here. So if we want to talk mergers and acquisitions, you're all here. So during a break, eat some donuts or cookies or whatever out there today and start setting up the appointments. And then when we do the drawings after the break, we can say, hey, we have 7 MLSs as a result of this conference that are going to start talking merger.
There we go. There we go. Eat a cookie, have a donut, have a discussion, merge, come back and let us know so we can make the announcement before we finish this afternoon. David will take us through the list of successes that we've had. Great. Awesome.
And milk. I got to have milk.
Milk with the cookies.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
As we sometimes read in the media that the industry is changing and we have new kinds of brokers and the brokerage industry is changing and we have the compasses and the iBuyers, do we as an MLS industry have to be concerned about that? How do we, which we're trying to change ourselves, how do we stay current with our customers, which are changing all the time? Do we serve the customer of 2020 different than we do today? Because the industry is changing, does that mean we have to change, or can we continue doing what we're doing? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I mean, is the customer changing our paradigm?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And we have to evolve as MLSs. And, we get a lot of conflicting messages at us. Real estate is local, there are no borders, and we have to walk that line of balancing all those mixed messages. But I do think we have to, as MLSs, embrace all the different business models that are out there. And it doesn't make some of the old timers happy that there's these new business models, but if they have a license and they subscribe to the MLS, we need to figure out how to work with them. So part of our struggle with being an MLS is realizing that there are different types of business models and what is our role. But if you come back to the core value of MLS, which is not just cooperation and compensation, and that drives me nuts when people say it's just cooperation. That's just the start. I think MLSs have really grown to be much more than that. And I think the brokers want to belong, all the business models, to the MLS. Because one of the things the MLS does that nowhere else are they doing and is the data compliance, to make the data as valuable as it is. And that's a value that the MLS brings that I think that the brokers who belong to the MLS are starting to appreciate it more, but that's why everybody wants the MLS data. So I think the MLS role is growing, it's also changing, and we have to change with it. I'm not going to sit here and say I have all the answers, because I certainly don't. But if we can work together, I think we will figure out what needs to happen.
So clever wisdom, right? We are changing and we are growing at the same time, and we have to adapt. We have to go to where the puck is. And you all have to do that at the same time. That's what makes our industry and your leadership so special and unique. It's not easy. You've got to change while the industry under you is also changing at the same time. And we might not know what that means. Tom, how do you feel about that?
I agree. You know, MLSs are like the original social network. And we had this community of professionals sharing information and communicating for decades and decades before social networks were really created on the web. And I think what's happened is we do get comfortable, maybe complacent in our sphere, but social networks are global now. And you know, this guy Friedman wrote this book, The World is Flat. So it's pretty easy to create global information structures. And I think that's the challenge for MLSs, is to understand that the brokers need access to the data, and they need access to more data and better, faster. And we are not enabling that. So consolidation is really about enabling the resources for our member brokers in a way that we hadn't thought of before. And so these barriers need to come down. Whether it's actually a full merger or a consolidation of MLS-A with MLS-B, is it really the organizations have to go away, or do our brokers just need access to the information? And so I think that's where the grid comes in and some of these other things. But again, I think it takes time to digest what these solutions might be.
MLS is the original social network. Great. So, and the number 695 is not important, right? It doesn't mind if it's 695 or 95 or 9. As long as we're a network and we can serve our brokers, the number actually is totally immaterial, right? Mm-hmm. Michael, we know that we have to serve the broker. We know that they're our customers. We know that you are the most important. But we're getting these, as Anna-Marie said, we get mixed messages from the brokers, right? Because the small broker, the big broker think differently. The ones that in 4 markets compared to 70 markets give us different signals. How do we as MLSs in the room get a better message from the brokers? How do we better engage with the brokerage community to really understand what it is that the brokers in our market want? It's hard to communicate with you guys sometimes.
It is hard, but at the same time, I think we lose sight that the center of the transaction is the agent. It's that agent sitting at a kitchen table on a Sunday night getting a purchase and sales agreement signed. That's it. So our industry, and when I say our industry, I'm talking beyond the realtor association. I'm talking about all of the outliers, if we want to call Zillow or Trulia or the other aggregators that are out there outliers. Everyone's fighting for the attention of the agent, and that's where everything gets monetized. The consumer, the one thing that we've been able to hang our hat on as this industry has changed over the years is that the consumer consistently returns to the expertise of the agent. That's it. So my company, what we focus on is how do we make our agents more efficient? How do we give our agents better tools? How do we support them? How do we train them better? And I think from an MLS perspective, certainly a more consistent delivery of information, an easier process, all of those things makes that agent's world easier, that their job, they can navigate on a daily basis without having to worry about changing operating systems, et cetera. So really, I think let's just get rid of all the noise that surrounds it and get back to the fact that it's about the consumer-agent relationship, and that's it.
Yeah, get rid of the noise. Anna-Marie?
So easier said than done, and it's interesting to me. So already today I've heard at least 3 conflicting messages, and there's a lot of conflicting messages in the report too, right? So there's the leveling the playing field that we've all heard. There's the give me the technology I need. How do you balance that? There's the, we need to be where the consumer is. I've heard you have no business in front of the consumer. Mm-hmm. There's the agent is the center of the transaction, but the broker owns the listing. So that's our world, is balancing all of those. I think a role that NAR can and should play is and they have, really pushed the bar on saying the associations and the MLSs need to be where the consumer is, and that the consumer messaging has got to be part of what we do, which has helped actually move some of the MLSs along to say, okay, we do need to be where the consumer is on the MLS side. But as far as the agent, that's the old struggle. All the syndicators go to the agent, and they end up pitting the MLS and the broker and the agent against each other, and we got to figure out how to, that we can be the leaders instead of outside forces in making the agent have what they need, without the brokers feeling like we're leveling the playing field and giving them what they need.
I think too, on leveling the playing field, I think one thing that we've had success with is engaging those large brokers in what we do and what we offer in terms of technology. And one conversation I know we had in a board meeting from a small broker to a large broker is saying, you know, look, us as an MLS offering a showing service is not going to make all the company agents in your company leave, right? Those days are gone. So there are so many things that have become standard in our industry that all brokerages want and need. I do think that's the role of the MLS, to say, you know what, if our goal is making our brokers' lives easier, let's work out efficiencies, make services cheaper for the brokerage. And again, when you hear that leveling the playing field argument, I think that's where the dialogue begins, as saying this is not leveling the playing field and this is why. And then when you start getting the buy-in of the larger brokerages, like we've been fortunate enough to do, I think you hear that phrase annoys me more than any other, I think, leveling the playing field. Ugh. But I think that's how you eliminate it.
You also said pushing the bar, raising the bar. It goes back to Greg Robertson, that sometimes we're still looking for the bar.
Yeah.
We're not always necessarily sure where it is. Just a quick, give me a mark out of 10, and I'm catching you off guard here. The technology, not of your company or your MLS, but the industry in general, MLS technology on a scale from 1 to 10. If 10 is where we would like to be, where the technology should be to compare with the outside world, where is MLS technology today on a scale from 1 to 10? 10 being, we are there, we've got what we should have, it's perfect, it's 100%, 0, we're bad. Where do you think we are as an industry, roughly, MLS technology? Are we there? Give us a grade out of 10, do you think?
2.
2. Oh, ouch. Anna Marie?
I was going to be kind and say 6 or 7.
6 or 7?
Don't be kind. Don't be kind.
Tom, what do you think?
Yeah, I would have been the glass half full, not no
That's
water
okay.
in the glass.
That's his opinion. What do you think? You're saying a 5? Tom, you're saying a 5?
Yeah, I'd go 5.
5-ish?
I'd put it at 4 or 5.
4 or 5. So in no case a good grade, right? Doesn't mind. So on the MLS side itself, we're being a little bit more generous, but we're between 5s and 6s and 7s. And then our customers are saying probably it's half of that. It's probably between a 2 and a 4. So we have a long way to go. Ouch, ouch. Okay.
That'll teach you to ask me the question first, right?
It would have been, yeah, well, you would have put them on their feet. Let's end up, and we're going to start with Anna Marie and Tom first, and we'll end with our 2 customers. Give me a 30-second or 1-minute takeaway. What would you like to leave the room with behind today? What would you like to tell the leadership of the industry that they should do?
So I thought about this, and I have broken it up into the message to the volunteer leadership versus the MLSs in the room. And to the volunteer leadership, I would say if you're in a market that's struggling with whether you should consolidate or not, or you're a broker in multiple markets, that you need to not put your money where your mouth is, but you need to act. You need to say this is going to happen. Because I do think that the brokers are too driven by the agents in some of the markets where they've lingered for too long, and these dysfunctional MLSs continue. And I think that the brokers need to say it's happening, and not worry about the top producers in a tiny little market leaving the company. I think that's got to happen, and we need it to happen somewhat in our market as well. To the MLSs here, again, I would say what I said earlier, if you are association owned, now is the time to say, how dependent is our association on our MLS revenue? And what do we need to do differently to be independent of the MLS revenue? Our Realtor Association that I'm the CEO of is the sole shareholder of our MLS. But we have spent literally the last 10 years getting to the point where we derive no revenue from the MLS to function as an association. Thank you.
Right.
And it's not been easy, and the association budget is very tight. There's no question. But we knew there was going to be a day, or could be a day, where there would be no MLS revenue. It hasn't happened, but it needs to be that they are completely independent of each other.
So two great messages I heard there. It picks up almost on what Rob said, right? Separating church and state, almost. Make sure that the one is not solely dependent on the other one, and that the other one drives, manipulates, influences, guides, influences the other one. And then the other one I heard, which we maybe glance over quickly, but I think it deserves a round of applause. We need to ask our clients, our brokers, our people on our board, to step up if they want a difference, if they want to change the grade, the mark, the consolidation, the consistency. Step up and have your voice be heard. MLSs are there to serve your constituents, so stop griping about it and step up to the plate and make a difference and facilitate the difference if you really want that difference. We sometimes have, I think, some of our brokers which are sometimes a little absent from the decision, and then they send other representatives or sometimes agents to the committees. So let's ask our brokers and our leaders of our industry to step up, tell us what they want, and take the lead. We'll be there next to you. Tom, how do you feel?
Anne-Marie really said it very well, but I think it's making the commitment and it's engaging our member brokers to be involved in the conversation. It's pretty easy to go to the board meetings, do their thing, and then go away. And then they kind of leave it up to the staff, like CEO to CEO networking, like we do at these conferences, to create those conversations or start the conversations. And I like the idea that our brokers should be engaging and starting that conversation with the brokers in the neighboring MLSs instead of leaving it up to the staff. So make the commitment and take action. It's about taking some action. And you could fail. It might not work. You might learn that it's not going to work, and then you go do something else. So
you have in your areas some very large brokers, some that really dominate the markets which they play in, and you have some names which are national names. Do they participate? Are they active? Do you hear from them? Do you have discussions with them about change or future?
This is a delicate answer. I would say on a scale of 1 to 10, the glass is not half full. I don't think they participate at the level that they could, and it may just simply because it might not be their focus, but if we can help them create that as a focus, I think that makes a big difference.
So what I take from that is you have a association-owned MLS, and the other one side you have a broker-owned MLS, and they both struggle with very much the same thing, right? The brokers often don't participate at the level we would like them to or would like to encourage them to. So if that's with two very progressive MLSs and MLSs which are deemed to be very successful, then some of you which are at a smaller MLS might have the problem even worse, might even be harder. Michael, so we're going to ask you guys to step up.
I think that's a fair request. I think it's our responsibility as brokers, because we sit in between the MLS and the agent. And really, when we ask that question, who is the center of that MLS universe? I don't know that there is a true center, but the broker does sit right in the middle. We have to be present, and we have to lead. It's just as simple as that. Our agents oftentimes will just give us confusing messages because they're just concerned about that next transaction. We have to be able to look further down the road than that. So, I guess in my perspective, for what I would like to see, I really do believe that the industry is best served when all brokers have a level playing field. I'm sorry to say that.
I'm glad you feel that way.
But we have to have access to the same tools and services. Then it's up to the broker how they want to differentiate themselves in the marketplace. So when the question comes up whether MLSs should be providing tools outside of the core MLS services, absolutely, if that's within their power, because that's only going to raise the bar for the entire industry. And then it's my job to say whether or not I want to use the tool that the MLS has provided, or if I want to get something else and give my agents a point of differentiation. So yeah, I think we have to work together. It's just as simple as that.
So I know you can't speak on behalf of all brokers, but if I could ask you, would you speak, at least from your point of view, would you like to see the MLS as a ally and a friend and a partner, or as a combative or an enemy?
Well, I think that's an easy answer, Stefan. Yeah, absolutely an ally. And I think we have to, as an industry, I look at my competitors as my allies. I look at certainly the agent population as my allies. We have to work together. If we're dysfunctional, then we're going to lose this industry altogether.
Yep, I agree. Allies, we have to be together. I'm going to give you the close. You said that you wanted the close, just not go first. So we're at 2%, right? We're at the level 2 out of 10. Tell them how we're going to get to a 3 or a 4 this year and a 4 or 5 next year, and maybe we can get to a 6 or a 7 by 2020. Yeah, how do we get there?
I think the broker volunteers, one thing we have to keep into consideration. We're talking about consolidation, and what a group of executives don't like to talk about, and what's uneasy about that is consolidation could be, in a lot of people's mind, job loss, not just for the CEO, but for their staff. And one of our recent acquisitions, the former CEO of the smaller MLS said, I worry about the people that work with me, and if we consolidate with you, how do I look them in the eye and say I don't need you anymore? And the point is, if you as a broker are on an MLS and you think you're not being more progressive because your CEO is being territorial, your board can make a pretty easy decision the next time that contract comes up for renewal, right? If you're facing that, then as a board, make the tough decision. I would gather that 95% of the people in this room are not in that position. Maybe the people who aren't here are, but try to figure out if you become more efficient, if consolidation makes you more efficient and helps you save money. An organization with more money shouldn't have to let go staff, right? You can deploy the staff to do other things that can raise that technology score from a 2 to a 5 to a 7 to a 9 where we want it to be. So in my mind, being future-sighted, understanding that 3 and 5 year goals are important, but I think from a staffing standpoint, from a merger standpoint, you have to make sure that we remember there are people's lives involved. And I think sometimes that's why we step back a little bit and say, I don't know how to answer that question. How does somebody that is a leader of 10,000 and a leader of 40,000 talk? Because neither one of them wants to give up the number 1 position in the job. So it's not about the MLS staff at the end of the day in the broker's eyes. In the broker's eyes, it's all about us, right? And if you're serving the self-centered people like some brokers can be, you got to help us understand how you can make it all about us. And I think when you can figure that out, that's how everybody gets a little bit happier, I suppose.
Right. This report is for you. It's for the industry. You can go to MLS Agenda 2020 or MLS Roundtable. Please share it with your members. It is nothing more than just a Kickstarter for the discussion. We would like you and your association to start thinking about 2020 and how do we get there. We had some thought and some input today from the people on the stage. Let's give them a round of applause for their gratitude and their participation. Thank you very, very much.
Hey, Mike.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
pleasure.
Tom? Michael, thank you very, very much.